Sounds of a wartime festival they had in LVIV yesterday. Joseph Lindsley joining us now live from Ukraine. Hi, Joe. From Ukraine. Hi.
Hey, Bob.
Hi.
Good afternoon from Lviv. I've returned. I traveled over the weekend from Kharkiv in the east, about 30 miles from Russia, now to western Ukraine. And this is a fierce song called Kashtani, which means chestnuts, like the chestnut tree, a very popular tree in northern Ukraine. The band is called Dity Inzehneriv, which means children of engineers. It's a true title. The musicians are actually engineers themselves, and so were their parents. And it's a Ukrainian punk band. I met them in the time of the pandemic because they had made a protest song supporting the people of Hong Kong who were resisting the tyranny of Beijing. And now they're in that very same fight themselves. And you can hear the vocals of the great Ukrainian Sasha. She's singing this song, two verses. The first verse is written by the band's guitar player, and it's a reflection on his city of Chernihiv in northern Ukraine, not far from Kyiv, which almost fell into Russian hands. The Russians were on the outskirts of the city. And then the second verse is about a friend of the band, his town in occupied Zaporizhia that did fall into Russian hands. And the song is about, what it means to lose your city, and every day to wake up to the fact that your city or life within your city could be lost. And the band Dity Inzehneriv had traveled to Lviv yesterday to play this wartime festival. As the guitar player was telling me about this song, he had tears in his eyes, and that's such a common thing here. People don't break down crying, but there's tears in the eyes as people talk about living through this pain, and that's why I think this festival, sort of a bold thing to do, to gather many people in time of war, but it's here in Lviv, where when there is an alarm, you have enough time to get to shelter, and so they figured this festival is further east in Ukraine. It's called Fino Misto, kind of like Cool City, and it was really great to go there. And I had some American friends who were visiting. They were nervous even just being here. They just arrived in Ukraine, and there they are at a punk and rock and country and folk festival with people of all ages singing and dancing, really singing with such ferocity. And, it was surreal, but there were all kinds of, you think of in Corona time when there were new regulations and at public events. And now, at this festival, everywhere you go, you see the yellow signs telling you Ukraita, where the shelter is. You have to know where that is at all times. Fortunately, it was a calm day here in Lviv yesterday, and in the crowd at that concert of Dity Inzehneriv was a soldier, a drone pilot named Stas, and he had played the music of this band to get pumped up before battle. And so one day he wrote the band on Instagram, and he told them that how much their music helped him, their punk rock music, and so they began to talk with each other. And he began to tell them what his, he and his fellow soldiers needed. And so the band began to raise money for drones for Stas's unit. And then Stas would send them video of the drones in action, the drones doing, the most important thing, the work of killing the invading Russians. And the band added their soundtrack to these videos. And so they really began a great cooperation. And as Serhiy, the guitar player, told me yesterday, then he got a note from Stas. Stas had been wounded. He was in the hospital, and when I met with Stas at the festival yesterday, he told me, he said, there was an explosion and it's really tough to describe, and I won't go into all the details, but he looked, and his hand was almost touching the ground, and his arm was hanging by just a few threads of skin. And he and his wife, who I met yesterday as well, they have the same tattoo of an angel's wings on their arm. And right where that tattoo was is where his arm was still attached. And he said when he was in, they were in the field hospital, and the guy next to him had his leg amputated, and they were about to amputate Stas's arm. And Stas looked at the doctors and he said, "Please don't. Please give me a chance. I'm going to find a way for my arm to work." And he said that he could, he showed that he could still kind of move his fingers. There was enough still attached. And so as I was talking to Stas yesterday, his arm is in a brace. It's attached, and he's healing, and he's hoping to get back to the fight even in September, although everyone says that's probably pretty optimistic. But, that's where you see, the Americans were there to witness this conversation. That's why this festival was great for people, in the crowd you had children, you had people like Stas who were wounded and needed a moment to find some strength and almost to imagine what life could be like uh, after this time. And as Stas told me, he said, I don't like killing. I don't want to kill, but I have to. He said, we have no choice. He said, we are not the destroyers. And we were on a rooftop overlooking the festival. And he said, you look down at all these people. These are the creators. These are the people who oppose destruction. And even in the time of war, they insist on living and singing. And he says, that's what I'm fighting for. And then even later in that evening, on the streets of Lviv, and Lviv it's very different. Every Ukrainian city, like any city, has its own soul. And Kharkiv, is more, became more Soviet ties. But Kharkiv now is a very strong, industrial, business-like city, and with a great spirit because they've suffered through so much. But Lviv is a city of poetry and singing, and it's really, I've been gone for almost a month, and as I walked in the streets last night, there was maybe 50 people in a circle singing fiercely the Ukrainian folk songs. And it's this city that really is kind of the reservoir of Ukrainian culture. And people from all over from the East come here to sort of renew that strength before they go out to fight and do their work in other parts of the country. And speaking of other parts of the country, last night at midnight, Kharkiv was hit. There was a warehouse hit, different reports as to what exactly it was. And then at 9 o'clock this morning, major tragedy or major atrocity committed by the Russians at city of Kryvyi Rih in south central Ukraine, President Zelensky's hometown. It's a mining city. It's the longest city in Europe. It's like 120 miles long because it follows the river and the mines. The Russians sent missiles there. They hit a residential building. At least 5 civilians were killed, including a 10-year-old child, and 43 people so far have been reported as injured. So once again, we see Russians hitting civilian targets in the middle of cities. And so even amid, those moments of singing and trying to have some moments of peace, there is this heaviness weighing upon everyone and thinking about, what the Russians might be up to next.
Joseph, a couple of thoughts on what you have told us today. First, I'm thinking about all of the festivals around Chicago this weekend. Many of us were out and about enjoying that, and it's hard to believe you can still enjoy that in the wartime in Ukraine. That still goes on there. It's a testament to the spirit of the people there. And also, when you tell us about an individual like Stas, somehow that is more meaningful than when you hear about a large scale attack and many people injured or killed. It somehow brings the war home to us more when you tell us about that one individual. It really does.
Yeah, and I think this is and that's just whenever, and I was explaining this to the Americans who were visiting when they first came to Lviv. Beautiful summer day. You see people in the cafes, and everyone when they first come here says, "Oh, everything looks fine." I said, just start talking to people, and everyone has these stories, and not just sad stories, but stories of incredible heroism. And even at that festival yesterday, with some of the prisoners, the heroes of Azov that had been in the steel plant during those first few months of the Russian full-scale invasion. They were in prison, Russian prisoners of war, and in a negotiated release, thanks to Turkey and Saudi Arabia, they returned. And so some of those guys were there at that festival last night. And so everyone is, everyone is in this together. But yeah, the best way to show the reality of the war is the individual stories, and it's those individuals together that make this work. And that's really what Ukraine is. It's just democracy. It's not the government. It's the people. And if anyone wants to help Stas and his guys, with that band, Dity Inzehneriv, we're going to help them get drones. So UkrainianFreedomNews.com. And my friend, who was also at the festival, Ukrainian artist, he goes by the name Nevan Made. He's made some of the most iconic posters of the war, of the tragedies, but also the moments of heroism. And whoever donates the most, we're going to get some posters to those people in the States. So UkrainianFreedomNews.com. And thanks for. We're in this moment now while Ukraine waits and hopes for fighter jets and bigger weapons. We're getting guys like Stas every single thing they need in the front lines is the best that regular people can do right now to stand against the Russian invaders.
I feel like every morning here, Joseph, we get another chapter of the book I know you're going to write someday, and we'll have more tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. Until tomorrow.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages. That's very important that much more people can get more information about the situation here and how everybody can help Ukraine to stay stronger and to save all the world.
Що сказав?
Well, which side are you on?
На чиїй ти стороні?
Come on now. Oh, which side are you on?
На чиїй ти стороні?
Ебать.